I think he ran like 100. audio soprattutto qui. Yeah, we were right. Well, like, I don't know, doing that shit like like comic.
I've already seen some of this.
No, please do.